She was drafted #1 to her girlfriend's team. Paige Bueckers and Azzi Fudd are on the same team. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Wait, is there an exemption for lesbian women in basketball that are coworkers to be able to have the sex? I mean, everybody else in the world gets a memo. That memo says, don't be stupid.
Watch that reaction carefully, because what you're seeing right there is the moment someone realizes they have to publicly discuss something that's been whispered about in private for months. The body language, the hesitation, the careful word choice. This isn't just another WNBA talking point anymore. This is a conversation that mainstream sports media is now forcing the league to have. And it all centers on one question. When does a personal relationship between players become a professional problem?
Fudd situation with Azzi Fudd getting drafted #1, largely in due part to her being Paige Bueckers' girlfriend. You get spare me with trying to convince me she should #1 pick. There's no way she should have been #1 pick over Lauren Betts, Olivia Miles, or an Our Fam. I'm sorry. I just got to keep it real. Okay, now we have seen this stuff play out. People are talking about it. I know this is a touchy subject for some people, but this is a topic that is being spoke about now. So let's get into it. Welcome to
Azzi Fudd went #1 overall in the 2025 WNBA draft to the Dallas Wings. On paper, that's a franchise making a decision about their future. But here's the context everyone's talking about. Her girlfriend, Paige Bueckers, plays for that same team. They won a national championship together at UConn in 2024. They've been dating publicly since then, and now they're teammates in the pros. The Dallas Wings just used the first overall pick to draft their franchise player's girlfriend, and the internet has opinions.
What happens if they break up and they teammates?
That's a great question. We saw the messiness and the problems with Melissa Smith, Dejanay Carrington in Dallas. We saw things going on. It was a lot going on.
Is the more pressing players.
What happens if they break up and they teammates?
Now that is the more pressing issue to me.
If you talk, Trey.
If there is extramarital, they're not married, but extenuating circumstances outside the relationship.
Now here's where this gets complicated, because this isn't new territory for the WNBA. Alyssa Thomas and DeWanna Bonner have been together for years, played on different teams, eventually ended up on the same roster. Nobody really made a big deal about it. The league moved on. But then came the Dejanay Carrington and Alyssa Smith situation, and that's when things got messy in a way the league couldn't ignore.
Now, for Indiana Fever Caitlin Clark fans, this is a touchy subject because we watched this play a part in destroying the team in Caitlin Clark's rookie season. Dejanay Carrington was doing all types of dirty stuff to Caitlin Clark. Scuffles were happening during games, and Alyssa Smith was helping her girlfriend and the Connecticut Sun and not her own teammates. People had a real problem with that. She watched Caitlin Clark get poked in the eye, never defended her teammate because it was her girlfriend doing it. It was an issue. Fast forward.
Indiana Fever fans remember this vividly. September 2024, Fever versus Connecticut Sun playoff game. Dejanay Carrington pokes Caitlin Clark in the eye during a defensive play. It's aggressive, it's borderline dirty, and the entire Fever bench erupts, except for one player, Alyssa Smith, who's dating Dejanay Carrington, who just watched her girlfriend potentially injure her own teammate, and did absolutely nothing. She didn't defend Clark. She didn't even acknowledge it happened, because the person who did it was sleeping in her bed at night.
She's the franchise.
So
I was just going to add more context here. So the two played at Connecticut last year, won a national championship together. Yes, they've been dating since then. Played during this season. Also, this isn't something that's like abnormal. Alyssa Thomas and DeWanna Bonner are a married couple in the WNBA. Also,
listen for Harrisburg.
Yeah, okay. There's also more like crazy situations. Dejanay Carrington and her girlfriend, Alyssa Smith, they were broken up. They ended up getting back together afterwards. They were broken up, and a scuffle ended up happening on the court between opponents. But between opponents, Dejanay Carrington and the other one,
and that's the smoking gun moment that changed this entire conversation, because suddenly this wasn't theoretical anymore. This was a player choosing her relationship over her team in real time on national television during a playoff game. The Fever season ended shortly after. Smith got traded to Dallas in the offseason. And here's where it gets even stranger. The Dallas GM came out publicly and said they acquired Smith specifically because they wanted her girlfriend, Dejanay Carrington. They admitted it, out loud, to reporters. Both players proceeded to have terrible seasons in Dallas. Then they got traded to separate teams, and now DeJohn's allegedly involved with Jackie Young in Las Vegas, while Smith's somewhere else entirely.
Well, this kind of makes the W really, really fun. I'll be honest with you. This makes the W fun. But I will say this. It is an interesting situation because if something like you said, Trey, does go awry, you're trading a number 1 overall pick now? It's a different situation when it's Azzi Fudd and it's Paige Bueckers, 2 back-to-back number 1 overall picks playing in the same exact team. Yeah. It's a difficult situation. Now, granted, the Dallas Wings have been terrible. They have been my team. They're awful, and they're trying to get back to being a whole lot better. But in a situation like that, yeah, it's going to result in a trade. We've seen it before. We've seen it whenever where two partners aren't getting along, or they are getting along and they want to end up playing together. It ends up being something that becomes a part of the league story. And I think that in itself.
So when people look at the Azzi Fudd situation and ask questions, they're not being unreasonable. They've watched this movie before. They've seen how it ends. And they're wondering if Dallas just made the same mistake twice. Because here's the thing about the number 1 overall pick. It's supposed to be about talent evaluation, franchise fit, and long-term potential. It's supposed to be the most important basketball decision a team makes all year. And if personal relationships are factoring into that decision, even a little bit, that's a problem.
Whether it's right or whether it's wrong, but it is something that could be concerning in a way. Just because you never know how that's going to turn out. If these two end up getting in some sort of adulterous situation, I pray not. They actually seem like very happy together. But if that ends up being the case, how do you show up to work every single day? We see this in the professional world already. Yeah. When you're working with your partner or husband, spouse, whatever it is, you end up having situations where maybe there was something where they were crazy at home. You're leaving that job.
You know, the other thing that we haven't also talked about is like when there is one that is less talented, but the two are still connected. Remember, there's been several coaches where it's like, hey, I'm not going to fire this person, so fire me. This just happened.
Now let's be clear about something. Azzi Fudd is a talented player. She was a McDonald's All-American. She won a national championship. She's got legitimate skills. But was she the best player available at number 1? That's where the debate gets heated. Lauren Betts from UCLA had a dominant senior season. Olivia Miles from Notre Dame is one of the best point guards in college basketball. Kiki Iriafen was putting up numbers that had scouts drooling. And all 3 of them were still on the board when Dallas made their pick. So when people say Azzi went number 1 because of who she's dating, they're not just being cynical. They're looking at the talent pool and asking legitimate questions about the decision-making process.
Wasn't going to fire like his OC, who might, I think was like his son too. So like,
you're talking about Kirk Ferentz at Iowa.
Yeah,
his son.
thanks
So
so much. Why the heck
he
did I remember that?
ended up having to sign.
Yes.
He ended
Hold
up
on,
having.
add context.
Yeah.
Kirk Ferentz is the longest tenured college football coach at the time.
Yes,
like
still is,
21
right now.
years.
Yeah.
And they were like, hey, Kirk, your son was the offensive coordinator. Iowa's offense atrocious historically.
Awful.
They ended up finally having to put into a contract, hey, if you do not average like
25 points a game.
25 points a game, in contract, we have to fire your son.
Everyone knew about it.
Because Kirk was like, I'm not firing my son. If you want to fire my son, fire me.
Yeah.
I've seen coaches, from what I heard, even Chip Kelly and Jerry Azzinaro were like this. Jerry Azzinaro was the defensive line coach, Coach Frederick Cox and all them cats. When Chip got fired, Azzinaro, from what I heard, stopped showing up to work.
Damn.
Like, Chip gone? I'm gone
out.
too.
Yeah.
Azzinaro ended up going to be the DC with Chip.
And this is where the corporate world comparison becomes relevant, because in most professional environments there are rules about this. You can't supervise someone you're romantically involved with. You have to disclose relationships to HR. Some companies prohibit dating between coworkers entirely. The reason those rules exist is simple. Conflicts of interest destroy teams. When personal feelings override professional judgment, bad decisions get made. Chemistry gets disrupted. Resentment builds. Now imagine that dynamic, but instead of an office, it's a basketball court. Instead of quarterly reports, it's playoff games. Instead of corporate hierarchy, it's on-court rotations and shot selection. The stakes are higher. The consequences are more visible. And there's nowhere to hide.
To tell y'all how close they are. Yeah. So I've seen certain situations where it's like, hold on, if I'm this close to somebody, if y'all do her like this or do him like this, y'all might as well do me like this too. That would be kind of my only.
And also, even just to like read between the lines on that story, it works the same. Like if he's out, I'm out. But then also, you said Chip Kelly got to UCLA and brought his mans with him, correct. So it worked. The inverse works too. Like if you want me, you also got to bring my mans on board too. But I wanted to ask y'all, because if things like this keep happening, we have incidents where teammates are feuding because they're partners and they're defending their partner over teammates, and it's just kind of a conundrum of things. Should the W try to implement a rule that, like, corporate America implements, where there's no dating in the professional world? Is that a rule that y'all could see? Do you think it's needed? Is it justified, or is it?
Here's the scenario that keeps coming up in these discussions. What happens when they break up? Because relationships end. That's just reality. And when they do, somebody's getting traded. But who? The franchise player who's been with the team for years, or the #1 pick they just invested in? That's not a basketball decision anymore. That's a hostage negotiation. And if you think that's dramatic, go ask the Dallas Wings front office how they felt when they had to navigate the Smith-Carrington breakup while trying to make playoff runs. Go ask them if they'd do it again. Because their actions this offseason suggest they learned absolutely nothing from that experience.
Out of bounds for the W.
That's a great question. That's a great question, bruh.
Almost like, before seatbelts were mandated. Until you see a crash, it's not needed. Kieran's point was the closest we saw to the crash with Dejanay, when, like, you're fighting your teammate to protect your girl.
That's on the other team.
Yeah, it's not.
Your ex-girl, though. It wasn't even they were together.
Yeah,
it
you're right.
It ended up being like a league thing. I think
And you know what? It's going to be interesting to see how that Alyssa Smith, Jackie Young thing play out in Vegas now. Like, that's going to be awkward. That's going to be very awkward, So, listen, man, this is becoming a very, very big topic, and it's something that you can't run from. It is what it is. Get down in the comments. Let me know what you think about it. This is Keep the Vision.
The comparison to coaching situations is instructive here. Kirk Ferentz at Iowa had to literally have it written into his contract that his son, the offensive coordinator, would be fired if the offense didn't average 25 points per game. The longest tenured coach in college football had to be contractually forced to make a professional decision about his own son because everyone knew he wouldn't do it voluntarily. That's what personal relationships do to professional judgment. They create blind spots. They make people defensive. They turn objective evaluation into emotional protection, and in the WNBA, where roster spots are limited and every decision matters, those blind spots can destroy franchises. Now here's what makes the Paige Azzi situation different from previous examples. They're both #1 overall picks. Paige went first in 2024, Azzi in 2025. That's back-to-back franchise cornerstones who are now dating each other. The power dynamic is different. Neither one is clearly subordinate to the other. They're both supposed to be building blocks for the next decade. And if things go south between them personally, Dallas doesn't have the luxury of choosing one over the other without massive consequences. That's not just a relationship complication. That's an organizational nightmare waiting to happen. So let's talk about what this means for the league going forward, because this conversation isn't going away. If anything, it's getting louder. The WNBA has always been a league where personal relationships are more visible than in other professional sports. Smaller rosters, tighter-knit communities, more interconnected social circles. That's just the reality of the ecosystem. And for the most part, it's been fine. Players have dated, gotten married, had families, and the league has functioned. But there's a difference between players on different teams navigating a relationship and teams making personnel decisions based on who's sleeping with who. That's the line, and the Dejanay Carrington-Alyssa Smith situation showed what happens when that line gets crossed. When Dallas went out and acquired Smith specifically to attract Carrington, they weren't making a basketball decision. They were making a relationship decision, and it blew up in their faces spectacularly. Both players underperformed, the team chemistry was reportedly a mess, and they ended up trading both of them away within a year. Now fast forward to the 2025 draft. Same franchise, different relationship, same fundamental question. Did basketball talent determine this pick, or did personal relationships? And here's why that question matters so much. Because if front offices start factoring relationships into draft decisions, free agency decisions, trade decisions, then you're no longer operating a meritocracy. You're operating a social experiment. And the teams that figure out how to navigate that are going to have a massive competitive advantage over the ones that don't. Think about what that means for player development. If you're a young player trying to make a roster, and you know that the coach's girlfriend is on the team, or the star player's partner is competing for your position, how do you feel about your chances? How do you trust that the evaluation is fair? Think about what it means for coaching decisions. If you're a head coach and you know that two of your best players are dating, do you feel comfortable benching one of them when they're struggling? Do you feel comfortable running plays away from one of them when the other one's on the court? Or are you constantly calculating the personal fallout of every professional decision? These aren't hypothetical questions anymore. These are real scenarios that WNBA coaches and front offices are dealing with right now. And the Paige Bueckers Azzi Fudd situation is going to be the test case for how the league handles this going forward. Because everyone's watching, fans are watching, media is watching, other teams are watching. And if this works out, if Dallas wins championships with this duo and the relationship enhances their chemistry instead of destroying it, then maybe the skeptics were wrong. But if it falls apart the way the Smith-Carrington situation did, if there's drama and trades and public messiness, then the league is going to have a serious conversation about implementing policies. Not because they want to police players' personal lives, but because they have to protect the competitive integrity of the sport. Some people are already calling for rules similar to what corporate America has, disclosure requirements, restrictions on players dating teammates, prohibitions on personnel decisions being influenced by relationships, and while that might sound extreme, it's worth remembering that those corporate rules exist for a reason. They exist because without them, bad decisions get made and organizations suffer. The WNBA is at a crossroads here. The league is growing, viewership is up, sponsorship money is flowing in, expansion is on the horizon. This is the moment when the league needs to be making smart, sustainable decisions about how it operates. And part of that is figuring out how to handle the reality that players are going to date each other, fall in love, get married, have complicated breakups, and all of that is going to happen in a very public, very scrutinized environment. The question isn't whether relationships should be allowed. Of course they should. These are adults making personal choices about their lives. The question is whether those relationships should influence professional basketball decisions, and if the answer is no, then the league needs mechanisms to ensure that doesn't happen. Because right now, in Dallas, there's a franchise that just used the #1 overall pick on a player whose girlfriend is already on the roster. And whether that was the right basketball decision or not, we're about to find out. If Azzi Fudd becomes a star, if she and Paige lead Dallas to championships, if their relationship makes them better players instead of creating complications, then everyone questioning this decision is going to look foolish. And that's fine. Being wrong about a draft pick is part of sports analysis. But if this goes the other way, if there's drama and dysfunction and eventually trades and public fallout, then Dallas is going to have to answer some very difficult questions about how they make decisions. And the league is going to have to decide whether it's willing to let this keep happening. So where does that leave us? It leaves us watching to see if Dallas made a brilliant move or a catastrophic mistake. Watching to see if Paige and Azzi can navigate being teammates and partners simultaneously. Watching to see if the league steps in with policies or lets teams figure this out on their own. And most importantly, watching to see if the WNBA can have this conversation honestly, without it turning into a culture war, without people taking sides based on politics instead of basketball. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about whether players should be allowed to date. It's about whether teams should make personnel decisions based on those relationships. And if you think those two things are the same, you're missing the entire point. The Dallas Wings made their choice. Azzi Fudd is a wing, Paige Bueckers is her teammate and her girlfriend. And now we get to see if love conquers all, or if professional sports requires a little more separation than that. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Dallas made the right call? Should the WNBA implement rules about this? And what happens if they break up? Because that's the conversation nobody wants to have, but everybody's thinking about.